So welcome everyone to this class. It's the second class in this session on Shir Hashirim, the love poem of the Bible. We encourage you to turn on your videos if you're able. It's really nice to feel like we're still together in a class as if it was before the pandemic. So please do if you're able. Also, feel free to ask questions or comment by writing here in the chat box. And like I said, you can also send messages to me in the chat box here on Zoom. Also, feel free to comment or ask questions if you're watching us live on Facebook as a comment. In this class, we will explore how the Song of Songs has been interpreted midrashically in a variety of ways. Those 3 sessions with Dr. Berlin will analyze it as a love poem and compare and contrast it with other ancient love poetry. It's my pleasure to introduce again Dr. Adele Berlin. Dr. Berlin taught in the Winter Week 2011 program and several times in the Drishat Shalom Fellowship. She's the Robert H. Smith Professor of Bible Emerita, University of Maryland. Her special interests are literary approaches to the Bible and the theory and practice of biblical interpretations. She has published 7 books, written over 30 scholarly articles, and edited 3 books. And so good to have you with us. And with that, I'll turn this to you, Dr. Berlin.
Thank you very much. Last time, after the last session, I got a question from a participant, actually a request, asking to talk a little bit more about Benot Yerushalayim, the women of Jerusalem. We came across them in passing, and they occur a number of other times in the book. I had mentioned before, but I'll kind of start over with the whole issue of Benot Yerushalayim. The difficulty in knowing how to analyze who or what they are. Really, it's a question of what function they serve in the book. They barely speak. They only speak to ask one question. Mostly they are spoken to by the woman, not by the man. And they have been analyzed in different ways. I don't view them as real women. That is, how shall I say it? There's nothing real in this book. This book is about love. And while you can picture real lovers, don't think of it as a record of something that actually happened. It doesn't even pretend to be, an actual historical occurrence. So to analyze the Benot Yerushalayim as specific women in Jerusalem doesn't help really at all. In the first handout, which I hope you have somewhere, I've listed the places that they occur, and they occur several times in connection with an oath formula. The first time that happens is in chapter 2, and in your handouts, you have the translation from the New Jewish Publication Society, which is what Sefaria has. But I will suggest some different ways of translating in the course of the discussion. The passage in chapter 2 actually begins with verse 4, and I'll just read you my translation. He brought me to the wine hall. Actually, I should read this in Hebrew first. So let me go to, okay. Haviyani el beit hayayin v'diglo alai ahava. Samchuni ba'ashishot rabduni b'tapuchim ticholat ahava ani. Smolo tachet l'roshi v'nino techabkeni. And then you have this oath, Hishbati etchem benot Yerushalayim b'tzvaot o ba'ailot hasadeh im ta'iru v'im te'oreru eta ahava ad shetechpatz. Okay, I will quickly go over the first verses. He brought me to the wine hall, and his banner over me is love. That's difficult, but I'm not going to go into it. Support me with raisins, spread me a bed with apples, for I am lovesick. Lovesickness, by the way, is a known malady in the ancient world. But what she's asking for with these, as she showed, raisins or raisin cakes and apples, is not food, but what I think it is a marriage bed, which marriage beds were decorated with herbs and flowers and nice smelling things. Ki cholat ahava ani. Okay. Then you have this phrase, Smolo tachat leroshi v'mino techapkeni. And if you look at your handout, you'll see that that occurs again in chapter 8 with the same oath following it. But in chapter 3 and in chapter 5, where some form of the oath occurs and Benot Yerushalayim occur, this phrase doesn't occur. So this is what drives us crazy about the book. There are repetitions. The repetitions are not complete. We're trying to understand, are these refrains? Do they come at certain times? Does it show there's a collection, or is it a continuous thing with a refrain? That's an ongoing question, which I won't ultimately solve. But what I will note about this oath formula is it seems to come at the end of a passage. And the thing about the left hand and right hand, but by the way, it's interesting how the new JPS translates. It doesn't say hand or arm. It says smolo and yamino. JPS has his left hand and his right arm because they were actually trying to describe the position. But most translations have hand in both places or arm in both places, just to be consistent. This position is a stylized representation of lovemaking. You know what it is. You can imagine what it looks like. So it's also like a formula that goes before the oath. Let me go word by word now, because what's hard about the Song of Songs is the wording. Hishpati etchem benot Yerushalayim. Now, from this verse, you cannot tell who's speaking because the gender is not marked in a word like Hishpati. But since she was speaking before, we assume that she is speaking here. Everybody agrees that she is the one who is saying these words. Hishpati etchem benot Yerushalayim. In fancy English, I adjure you, O maidens of Jerusalem. I would translate that as swear to me, women of Jerusalem. In other words, she isn't the one swearing something. She wants them to swear to her. And she wants them to swear by the tzvaot o ba'ailot hasadeh, by the gazelles or by the hinds of the field. This is altogether strange. What does this mean? When do you ever take an oath by animals? These two animals are mentioned together in a number of places. Gazelles and hinds of the field. These are these nice deer-like wild animals. Sometimes they're associated with love, but it's very strange to take an oath by animals. And it also isn't by both of them. It's either or, by gazelles or by hinds of the field. So what does this mean? The best explanation that I know of is by Robert Gordis. And he understands these animals as being substitutes for the name of God. Now, God is not mentioned at all in Shir Hashirim, except for one word in chapter 8, which is Shalhevet Yah. And the question is, does that Yah ending, is that God, or is that just, part of the word that makes it, bigger than just Shalhevet? But let me leave that. But God's proper name is not mentioned. But Gordus's suggestion is Tzvaot is for Adonai Tzvaot, and Ailot Hasadeh is for El Shaddai. Why is she substituting this? Because this is not a real oath. It would not be so appropriate to have God's name and a real oath to God in a book like Shir Hashirim. So this is an oath, but I would call it a pretend oath, a pseudo oath. It's serious. In other words, she wants to show how important it is, how serious this is. So she's using an oath formula. Now, in an oath formula, the word im does not mean if. It means don't. It's a negative. Im ta'iru means lo ta'iru or al ta'iru. The im ta'oraru eta ahava ad shetefpatz. This is very hard, and there's been a ton of interpretation about it. Ta'iru and ta'oraru come from the same root, which means to stir up, to awaken. Some people want to translate this as disturb. The other part, eta hava, we understand, love, in an abstract sense. Ad shetefpatz also is difficult. JPS has, do not waken or arouse love until it pleads, which means don't awaken love until love wants to be awakened. Maybe. I actually don't think that fits so well. The various interpretations, I would group them as follows. In the first group is the idea, do not disturb love or lovemaking until it has been satisfied. That means don't interrupt the couple in their lovemaking. If you remember, they were embracing, they were making love, and suddenly this oath formula comes. So the problem that I have with this is ta'iru and ta'oraru doesn't really mean disturb, really means more stir up or waken. So I'm not sure that they're saying don't disturb us. The opposite view is taken by a number of other scholars. Do not arouse love or make love prematurely before the proper time. That's more in line with the JPS translation. The proper time is presumably marriage, but this isn't about marriage. This is about lovemaking. So the first opinion advocates sexual fulfillment. In other words, don't disturb us, we're busy. Actually, what they're saying is premarital sex. The second is advocating chastity. Don't let yourself make love until the proper time, until it's time for love. So the premarital sex view would clash with most of the Bible, which is not in favor of premarital sex. And as for chastity before marriage, well, what I have to say about this is if that's the song's message, I don't think it is certainly delivering it in the most titillating manner, because all of this is about lovemaking. A third approach takes the verse as general advice about love in a more abstract sense. Cheryl Exum, who also wrote a very nice commentary on Song of Songs, explains that love has a will of its own. It is irresistible. She understands the oath to mean, do not seek to rouse love, because when it pleases love to be roused, you will know it. It's a little different from the others. It says, don't force it. You'll know when it's here. I'll skip a couple of others. I agree, by the way, that love is being used here as in an abstract sense, and that it is irresistible. But I don't think that this is a lesson or advice about when to make love or how to recognize love. I think all of that takes the oath too seriously. Love indeed is a powerful force. And in chapter 8, it says love is stronger than death. I think what's going on here is the woman has just experienced or is in the process of experiencing the force of love. And she is now saying to herself, ironically, promise me that you won't ever let me get so passionate again. The idea is, as I understand it, don't let love get started, because if it does, it will take complete control of you. But of course, there's no stopping love, and the woman is basking in erotic desire. There are a couple of other people who are moving also towards this understanding. Swear you won't try this, which means she really is liking it. Another translator says, do not waken up love, lest it consume you with wild pleasure. What's going on here with this oath is that the love scene is being cut off. Just as you're in the middle of it, just as you're going strong with lovemaking, it stops. And it stops with this oath, like, oh, how could I let myself fall in love and be so passionate? Don't let me do this again. My translation is, do not waken, do not rouse love whenever it wishes. In other words, get some control over it. So that's what I think it means. And by stopping this way, what it does, in a sense, is make it more erotic. Let me see if I can get back to it. If it went to the final conclusion, the tension would go down, but the tension is cut off in the middle. I think that's part of the eroticism of the whole book, and it comes up at certain crucial moments when you're in the middle of a lovemaking scene, and it's cut off with this. Let me mention also that Rabbi Silver sent me an interesting comment about women in the book of Ruth, the women, not the main characters, not Naomi and Ruth, but the women as an anonymous group who also say things, especially at the end of the book of Ruth. They say Hazot Naomi when she first comes back. They don't say much there. But at the end, get to what they say there. At the end, they actually have a long speech. In chapter 4 of Ruth, after Boaz marries Ruth, and Ruth conceives and has a son, Batomarna Hanashim El Naami. The women, these anonymous women, I'll call them the Bethlehem women, say to her, Baruch Adonai Asher Lo Hishbit Lach Goel Hayom V'Yikarei Shmo B'Yisrael V'Haya Lach L'Meshid Nefesh U'Kalkel Et Seivatech Ki Chalatech Asher Ehavtech Yoladeto Asher Hitova Lach Mishiva Banim. They're talking to Naomi, not to Ruth, and they're saying, in a blessing to God, Blessed be the Lord who has not withheld a redeemer from you today, what Naomi had been looking for. May his name be perpetuated in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain your old age, for he is born of your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons. I had not thought about this before, so I really thank Rabbi Silver for this note on the function. The women in the book of Ruth indeed function like a Greek chorus. The Greek chorus sometimes is women. When it's women characters, it's a woman's chorus. When it's men's characters, it's a male chorus. But the chorus in Greek drama has a lot to say. It's not a lot to say, but it explains. It gives messages. It explains the inner workings of things. And that's what's happening in the book of Ruth. That's not, however, exactly what's happening with Benot Yerushalayim, because they really don't say anything except for one little question. So although people have equated them with the chorus, I'm a little hesitant to say that they serve the same function as the chorus. What they do is serve as a sounding board for the woman speaker in Shir Hashirim. It's like a little child who has an invisible friend and who talks to that friend and expresses things to that friend. I don't want to be too facetious here, but the Benot Yerushalayim serve as a way for the woman to express herself. One scholar calls it, she's making a soliloquy, but she's addressing it, as it were, to Benot Yerushalayim. I would say she's talking to herself, expressing her inner feelings in a way that the audience or the reader can understand, can hear. I also don't want to leave you with the suggestion that Shir Hashirim is a drama. People have tried to see, does it work as a drama because it has dialogue in it? But as far as we know, ancient Israel did not have drama the way the Greeks did. The Greeks had a lot of drama, of course, they're famous for it. But we don't have that in ancient Israel, or as far as I know, in Mesopotamia or Egypt either. So dialogue does not mean drama. And I would say Benot Yisrael is not quite a chorus either. If you also take a look at the same handout on the Jerusalem women, you'll notice that in chapter 5, the animals that you swear by are gone. It's Hishpati etchem Benot Yerushalayim. Im timtzeu et dodi ma tagidu lo. In other words, that's in another whole section where the woman is looking for her lover. She doesn't find him, and she addresses the women of Jerusalem saying, rhetorically, what will you tell them? Tell them that I am cholat ahava, that I'm lovesick. So again, you have the same thing, but with a change. It's an oath, but it's not the full oath that you have elsewhere. In the last case, in chapter 8, the wording is very slightly changed. Hishpati etchem benot Yerushalayim ma ta'iro u'ma ta'oreru, which comes to the same thing. I mean, it means the same thing as im ta'iru and im ta'oreru. Okay, so that's the function and the occurrences of Benot Yerushalayim in Shir Hashirim. What I really wanted to do is look at several body descriptions, or what's called wasf, which is an Arabic term, and that's on the other 2 handouts. What I did was give you a couple of cases in the song. I gave you two occasions where there are descriptions of the bodies of the lovers. The first one I gave you in chapter 4 is a description of the woman, and the second one in chapter 5 is a description of the man. There are actually two others that describe the woman. I also gave you a number of examples from outside the song, because this is really a kind of literary trope that you find throughout the world. It's not specific to the Song of Songs at all. Let me see where my hands are. Okay, so let me just go over these so that you get a sense. First of all, what you will notice is that some of the examples I gave you are more straightforward than others. What I'm really interested in is the ones that have a lot of metaphors, especially extreme metaphors, like over-the-top metaphors. So the first one is from the Genesis Apocryphon. That's a text that comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's about some of the stories in Genesis. And this is a description of Sarah, and you don't find this in the Bible. What this is doing is expanding, kind of midrashically, as it were, on what we know from Genesis about Sarah. Now, this one does not have metaphors in it. It just says how beautiful she is, how lovely her forehead, how soft the hair of her head, how graceful are her eyes, how precious her nose. Every feature of her face is radiating beauty. How lovely is her breast, how beautiful her white complexion. And it goes to her arms and her hands, her palms and her fingers, and her legs and her thighs. So if you notice, it's going from the top down. Most of them go from the top down. One at the end of Shir Hashirim goes from the bottom up, but you can change these. The idea, of course, is to show perfection. I would say physical perfection, especially in a love poem. We find these in Akkadian also. Thighs are a gazelle in the plain. Here we begin to get metaphors. Ankle bones are an apple of Siman. Heels are obsidian, whose whole being is a tablet of lapis lazuli. If that doesn't make any sense to you, good. It shouldn't make any sense to you at this moment. Joseph and Asenat, which is not in the Bible, but it's part of the post-biblical literature. This is a story of Joseph and Asenat, and it describes her. And it was like the sun, and her eyes were like the rising morning star, and her cheeks like fields of the Most High. And on her cheeks there was red color like the Son of Man's blood, and her lips were like a rose of life coming out of its foliage. And her teeth are fighting men lined up for a fight. How do you like that for teeth? And the hair of her head was like a vine in the paradise of God, prospering in its fruit. And her neck was like an all variegated cypress. So here you have the kind of metaphors that you're going to meet in Shir Hashirim. I gave you a Greek example. The word ekphrasis or ekphrastic means it's describing a painting or a piece of art, a sculpture. And the Greeks often describes the sculptures. This happens to be a painter, and it's instructions on how to paint this girl. Her soft black hair, and make it smell of perfume. How can a painter make something smell? Paint her whole cheek and then her ivory brow beneath her dark hair. Do not part her eyebrows nor run them together, but let her keep, as in real life, the black limbs of her eyes. I will, you can read this for yourself. Her nose, her cheeks mingling rose and cream. Paint her lips, a soft chin, marble white neck. Dress the rest of her in robes of light purple, but let her skin show through a little to prove the quality of her body. That's very suggestive. She's not undressed, but you can kind of see her body through her dress. Where you find a lot of these, and they're really over the top, is actually in the Arabian Nights, which is, by the way, not poetry. It is kind of a love story. But here you have I just gave you one example. She has a forehead like the bright new moon, eyes like those of gazelles, eyebrows like the new moon of Ramadan, cheeks resembling anemones, and a mouth like the seal of Suleiman. Her countenance was like the full moon in its splendor, and the forms of her bosom resembled two pomegranates of equal size. Okay. Is that a beautiful portrait? Is she beautiful? With cheeks like anemones and the countenance like the full moon. These are not things that we would use, but you have to assume that they're compliments. I really like this one by Shakespeare, because what he's doing is making fun of this. What he's saying is the woman that he loves doesn't have all these beautiful attributes, but he loves her anyway. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wired, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses, damask, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath from that my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. I also gave you a modern one from Dolly Parton's Jolene. It's a kind of mini wasp. Most people don't recognize it as such, but your beauty is beyond compare, with flaming locks of auburn hair, with ivory skin and eyes of emerald green. Your smile is like a breath of spring. Your voice is soft like summer rain, and I cannot compete with you, Jolene. Now, this also is not a love poem. It's a jealousy poem. It's not addressed to a lover, but by someone who loves him. Okay. There are more, but I'm going to go to the text itself, which you should have now in your handout with the wafts inside the Bible. Okay, in the Song of Songs. And the first one that I want to look at is from chapter 4, verses 1 to 7. In the interest of time, I think I'm not going to read it, although as a teacher, I like to read the text. I'm going to highlight the difficult ones and give you some different interpretations. First of all, your eyes are like doves. That occurs several times in the song. Frankly, we don't know what it means. What does it mean to say your eyes are like doves? Is it the shape of dove's eyes? Is it the shape of the dove? Does it mean fluttering like a dove's wings? Does it mean sparkling, bright? We don't know. I tend to like the idea of brightness or sparkling, but I can't, I can't prove that. Here too, but by the way, we're moving from the top to bottom, and this is a love poem, and it's the man appreciating the woman. One assumes here that she is standing in front of him, or else he is at least picturing her. When we get to the description of the man, It's clear that the man is not standing in front of the woman who's describing him. But here, it could be that the woman is in front of the man and he actually is looking at her. I think of this not only as a description, but almost like what I call a visual touching of her body. In other words, he's appreciating every part as he mentions it. It's in a love poem, it's erotic. In Shakespeare, it's kind of whatever. Okay. The metaphors are animals or objects. Her nose, by the way, is not described here, but it's included in a later body description. Ears are never mentioned in any of these descriptions because it's probably more just the front that's being described. The emphasis is on the head and the upper part of her body in this case, and I think in most of them, and in ancient Near Eastern art, that's also what you get. Most of the attention is the face and upper body. As you understand now, this is a common literary trope. The Song of Songs didn't make it up. They were around. I don't know what the earliest one is, but they go back at least to Mesopotamia and Egypt before the song. There are some Egyptian songs also, which I did not give you in the handout, but they say, exquisite is her splendor, gleaming is her complexion, brilliant are her gazing eyes, sweet are her lips when they speak, high is her neck, resplendent are her breasts, pure lapis lazuli is her hair, her arms surpass gold, and it goes on like that. Okay. So how should we understand this? Again, there are different interpretations. Some people think that this is actually grotesque to describe a woman this way. I don't agree. The mistake is to see it as a composite, because if you take it as a composite, what you've got is birds and goats and ribbons and pomegranates and a tower and like all like a woman's got all these things stuck on her, as it were. It doesn't make any sense. What this is each thing separately. It's the ideal. Don't think that she actually looked this way. It's the ideal perfection of each part. We do this unconsciously also. Everybody among Caucasians anyway wants to be a blonde because blonde hair, that's the epitome of beauty, or blue eyes, or in the medieval period, certainly fair skin. Think of what you think the ideal woman is or what the ideal man is. Our ideal, of course, is not their ideal, but it's their ideal. And they are getting the ideal by taking a metaphor for that part of the body that suggests this is the best that there is. Okay, so now let's see how we're gonna get to all of that. The first problem we have after Einai Firmin is Nibad Litzamateh. By the way, I spend a lot of time on words and phrases because they're extremely difficult and because I actually think a lot of them have not been fully understood, but they get accepted in the translations. So the common translation for Mibad Litzamatech is behind your veil. And that makes a whole assumption about were women veiled in ancient Israel? Were unmarried women veiled in ancient Israel? I don't find any evidence of that convincing. So was she wearing a veil? I would question that. I actually think mibad l'tzamatech means framed by your tresses. In other words, her hair is framing, her eyes are like doves, which are framed by her hair hanging down on the sides. The problem is that this word only occurs in Shir Hashirim and once in Isaiah 47:2, where it says Gali Tzamatech. It's Isaiah is talking about the parts of the female body, and he's talking about of Babylon, the parts of the body that will be exposed as a sign of shame. And he says, remove or uncover your tzama. And as one commentator mentioned, it means reveal or uncover your hair. It doesn't mean remove your veil. So what we have here is her eyes are framed by her hair. And there are pictures, by the way, of women with their hair framing their faces, hanging down on the sides of their faces. As their hair often was long, it went to their shoulders. The Bible uses, by the way, other words for veil, not this word, and I won't go into that. Okay. Then it says, now again, if somebody said your hair looks like a bunch of goats running down a mountain, I'm not sure that you would like that very much. But what do goats, and it's not just goats, it's goats shegalshu mehar gilad. But you have to get the whole picture in there. What color are goats? Goats are black or dark brown. Sheep are white. So already it's dark hair. Dark hair is the model in the ancient world, not blonde hair. And what it is, again, galash. It's a modern. The word galash in modern Hebrew means to ski or to surf. It's what you do on the internet, and it's what you do, in skiing. It's a Mishnaic word and an Aramaic word, and this is one of quite a number of cases where the vocabulary of Shir Hashirim doesn't occur elsewhere in the Bible, but we find it in Mishnaic Hebrew or in Aramaic. That it's kind of a later usage. So since it's not an ordinary word, but we get the idea. It's cascading down the mountain. Mount Gilad is a very fertile, good for grazing goats on. And what you should picture is long wavy hair flowing down, the way it looks when a lot of goats are cascading down. There's a certain movement involved in this also. Then we come to the teeth. This also doesn't look like a compliment. Shinayim ke'eder hakutsuvot she'alu min haraktza, shekula matimot v'shakula ein bahem. The second part is nice. It's got an assonance, shekulam and shakula. What's a nice thing to say about teeth? Well, the second part of the verse says they're all matched and they're none missing. So that's a good thing. They didn't have, orthodontia then and dentists and, things like that. What does it mean to say that your teeth are like a flock of ewes? These are the female sheep. A flock of ewes to be shorn that have come up from the washing. It to us is a strange metaphor, but teeth are white, but after they've been washed, they're extra white. In other words, sheep are white, but when they've been washed, which they do before shearing, they're extra white. So what it's saying is her teeth are very white and they're perfectly matched. Kechut hashani siftotayich. That makes more sense to us. Your lips are like a red ribbon. By the way, the Shir Hashirim does not differentiate between what we would call natural beauty and beauty enhanced with cosmetics. In other words, all the perfumes and all the color that people would put on them, they're equally beautiful. Natural beauty is not necessarily better than having lipstick on. But I'm not saying that she has lipstick. Her lips are red, like Chut Hashani. And Chut Hashani is really refers to yarn, which was dyed a crimson color. It's the color that when Tamar had twins, she put this red cord on the first one, so she would know who the oldest one. There's something special about it. And in the story of Jericho, the woman who saved the spies also signaled which was her house so it wouldn't get destroyed by a red string or a red cord. So I think that not only are her lips red, but the echoes in other parts of the Bible suggest that there's something special about this. Midbarech Nava. Okay, your mouth is lovely. Kefela charimon rakatech, mibad l'tzamatech. Again, we have mibad l'tzamatech. But what is kefela charimon? Rimon we understand as a pomegranate, like a slice of pomegranate, like a split pomegranate, is your rakatech. And there's a lot of discussion about what part of the face this is. I would say it's cheeks, which to me make the most sense to be like pomegranates, rosy cheeks. But some people say forehead, or it may be just the face in general, the color of the face. I should mention that to be ruddy is to be healthy, but we'll meet that a number of times. I think we already saw it once before. So that whether it's her complexion in general or whether it's her cheeks, they're pomegranate-like. Again, we don't think of a pomegranate as a, but we say like cheeks like rosy apples. Kemigdal David Savarech. Okay, that's another one that puts people off. Do you want your neck to be like what I call the David Tower? This is not Migdal David that we know today. That's a later structure. We don't actually know what tower is being referred to here, but it must have been, some landmark that they knew. But what does it mean to say that your neck is like the Tower of David? Well, a high neck, a long neck is also desirable, but you have to go on to see what it means. The problem is that the next phrase is difficult also. Banui letalpiot, elef magen talui alav, kol shilte hadiburim. So a lot of people say, oh, this is a military image. It does have military overtones. Oh, she's being described as a warrior. This is a strong woman. This is a warrior woman. She's all armored up. I don't think that's at all what it means. Let me give you my translation. Like the David Tower is your neck, built for adornment. I'll come back to Talpiot. 1,000 bucklers are hung upon it. All are the shields of mighty men. Talpiot is the hard word here. Because again, it's like one of these, a number of words that we don't have anywhere else. It doesn't occur anywhere else in the Bible. And when we have it in later, say in the Mishnah, it's really coming from here. the ancient versions, that means the Septuagint, the Vulgate, which are the earliest translations that we have. The Vulgate is the Latin. The earliest translations of the Hebrew that we have, they didn't know what to do with it either. They transliterate it. They just, try say they take it as a place name, or they transliterate it, or they translate turrets, parapets, which some translations have. New JPS has built to hold weapons, which is based on Ibn Ezra. But Ibn Ezra understands it as two words, tal, or tel, from the word talal, to hang, and piot, sword blades. So in order to explain the word, Ibn Ezra is actually breaking it into two separate words. The King James has built for an armory. Most modern translations have in courses or in rows. And then they say, but what's the whole image here? What are they trying to describe? What is her neck being described as? What is a tower with bucklers and shields on it? How does that relate to a neck? It's jewelry, it's necklaces. What they're saying is, like a tower has shields hung on it, your neck has necklaces on it. Like a tower is tall and high and decorated with shields, your neck is tall and high and decorated with necklaces. Now, hanging necklaces, hanging shields, we have in the Bible and we have in Greek literature a lot of times. What they did was, it's not a matter of defense. They're not hanging shields to defend themselves against enemies. They're hanging shields as a sign of honor, a sign of victory. I'll read you a couple of verses. First one is from Ezekiel 27. Paras and Lud and Put were in your army, your mighty warriors. They hung buckler, magen, and helmet in you. They gave you splendor. Men of Arvad and Helech were on your walls all around. Men of Gamad were at your towers. They hung their shields all around your walls. They made perfect your beauty. In other words, a city wall or city tower with shields of the victors on it is a sign of beauty. We don't think of military, installations as metaphors for beauty. But in the ancient world, there were not a lot of big public buildings. There were palaces, there were temples, but sometimes large boats were signs of beauty. Military installations or architecture was a sign of beauty. There are a lot of these. David took the gold shields that were carried by the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each. He made 300 bucklers of beaten gold, etc., etc. And he put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon, that is the temple. And I can go on with that. So shields were put in the temple. The gold shields were not actual shields, not actually used in warfare, but they were decorative shields. So that's what they're talking about when they're describing her neck. Shnei Shadaya Kishnei Afarim to Omed Tzviyah Haroim Bashoshanim. This same verse occurs elsewhere as well. Why are breasts compared to Shnei Afarim? What are Afarim? Twins of a gazelle, two fawns, twins of a gazelle. I have no idea why it's fawns. What I think is important here is the twins, the doubleness, the two-ness of the breasts. And there are a lot of speculations about the fawns, but I won't go there because I don't have a good solution for it. Grazing among the lilies also occurs several times. It's fawns that usually graze in lilies. Later on, it seems to be the man is the man who's a shepherd is grazing among the lilies. It seems to be like a code for something erotic, but we can't pin down exactly what it is. I wanted to do chapter 5 where the man is described, but let me stop at this point and ask if there are any questions.
One question that came up much earlier in the session today was somebody was asking about the language of Hishabti etchem. Etchem is masculine, although the addressees are female, but not Yerushalayim. So if it's not
Good.
delayed for that.
Yeah, good. They're not too careful about grammar, about agreeing masculine and feminine. There are a number of instances of that. It's I'm not suggesting that it's sloppy. It's just that, you know, it wasn't a big thing to them at that point. If you did it, you know, you would lose points for it, but they sometimes kind of waffle between the two. But it's a good question. I know that you're reading carefully and you know Hebrew. I can also, you know, take suggestion. I didn't quite finish what I wanted to do this time. I was thinking next time to do the dream scenes, but if you have any other suggestion, if you want me to continue with this, or you get the idea enough with these descriptions, either I will do the dream scenes, or if you prefer something else. As I say, I'm heavy on language, but I'm trying not to burden you with a lot of, you know, lexical stuff and a lot of different comments that I find in the commentaries, because there are a lot of different ideas. My view of all of this is I always like start from the basic stuff. If I can't understand the words, then I can't understand the verse, and then I can't understand the image, and then I can't understand the idea. Sometimes you can fudge it, and if you don't understand a word or two, you still get the idea. But I think that Shir Hashirim is very difficult. So I do spend, you know, a fair amount on what these words mean and how they hang together. But again, I'm open to suggestions for our last session.
Dr. Berlin, just to go back to the first part of your presentation about Im Ta'iru v'im toru et havash techpatz, it always struck me that the way the book ends, the last verse, Rach Dodi, you know, flee my beloved, which is actually used in terms of the liturgical poems. I remember growing up as a kid, we would say Brach Dodi before in Gal Yisrael before the Amidah on Pesach. And it strikes me that at least the end of Shir Hashirim, the suggestion is that, you know, two people meet and they feel that it's right, but it's not yet the time. What strikes me is the way the midrashim see it. We read on Pesach, which is the beginning of our story, and we're not there yet, you know, with many trials and tribulations. So it struck me that the warning there, which is, you know, maybe the female character is speaking through by talking to this chorus, whatever, but there's an understanding that it may be right, that love is there, but it can't, but it's not the right time. I'm not ready yet. You know, I'm not ready yet. So maybe we meet in the future, because I mean, the liturgical poems on Pesach are all about run away, speak to God until the time of the temple is there, until you return to our temple, which is always found that very powerful. Any thought about that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a similar verse occurs earlier with slightly different wording, and again, it's difficult to know which direction they're going in. Is she chasing him away, or is she saying, come quickly from wherever you are to me? And I can spend a few minutes on both of the verses next time, because the other thing that's hard is ad sheyafuach hayom. In other words, people are undecided. Does that mean in the evening or in the morning? In other words, is it before lovemaking? Is it after lovemaking? It's also difficult. It's difficult also because it looks like one of these refrains, it's a disembodied verse. It's hard to connect it with any main scene, except to connect it with what comes before it. And is it cutting off the same way the oath with Benot Yerushalayim is kind of just, I don't want to go further with this, so let's stop. Is it that kind of thing? But if you notice, I'm not entering the midrashic world at all. I'm having enough trouble with the pshat here, trying to understand, just what it's saying on the surface. But the midrash does other things with it entirely. I mean, here the midrash, it's not just what midrash does, but other parts of the Bible. This is really the midrash is an allegoric interpretation. Most midrashim take the text and they elaborate on it. They fill it in, they connect it with other things, but they don't create a new story totally out of it. But the allegory means the whole thing is something different. And that's what's going on in the midrashim of Shir Hashirim. They're not reading it at all as a human love poem. They're reading it as the love between God and Israel. And there are actually good reasons for that, because in the prophets, we have that relationship, spoken about often negatively, that Israel was unfaithful, but the basic idea of marriage or love between God and Israel is really throughout the Bible, especially in the prophetic books. And the other thing that I don't know if anybody really knows, is how did this allegoric interpretation come to be? Was the song already being interpreted that way, and that's why it was accepted into the Bible? Or did it somehow get into the Bible and then get this idea? And if you don't interpret it allegorically, then what is it doing in the Bible? Does it have any right to be in the Bible? Is it like teaching you anything that you would want to be taught? So those are the problems. It's a very problematic book. And I think, as I mentioned before, it's a very late book too. It's, I don't know how late. Some people want to date it even, into the time of Herod, or at least part of it. But these are problems I can't solve, but I'll raise them because that's what's going on below the surface. And it was whenever we were trying to understand it, we're asking us, well, how should I understand this? What are my basic assumptions about what kind of text this is? Okay, I better stop soon. Anything else? Okay, I will quickly, next time I will look into Barach Dodi and its companion verse. I will just mention quickly, well, I'll see how much time I have. I'll do the dream scenes unless I have requests for anything else. Okay, guys, are we good?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Berlin, and thank you to everyone who had joined us today on Zoom, on Drisha Live, and on Facebook. We will be live again this Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern with a class with Rabbi Wendy and Salem on Haggadic history that will explore the question of where does God want other nations to keep the Torah. We will also be live again on Sunday at 10 a.m. with a class on Isaac and Rebecca, Partners in Succession, with Rabbi Silber. In addition, we have several other classes this month. You can find out more information as well as the registration links on our website at www.drisha.org/classes. And you can watch classes live on www.drisha.org/live. Thank you again for this opportunity to learn with you, Dr. Berlin, and thank you again, everyone who attended. We hope to see you soon at one of our upcoming classes here at Drisha. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay out.